Why do you continuously look outward for a permission slip that your own soul refuses to sign? You look at your current reality, your bank account, your fractured relationships, your stagnant career, and you treat these fragile material projections as if they were absolute, immutable truths, completely blind to the fact that they are merely the calcified remnants of yesterday's unconscious fears. By waiting for the world to change before you allow yourself to change, you have trapped yourself in a devastating psychological paradox. You are demanding that the mirror smile first before you ever dare to alter your own expression. This is not mere passivity, it is a profound and violent betrayal of your inner architecture. You have localized your center of gravity entirely outside of yourself, converting the external world into a tyrannical master and reducing your ego to a helpless, reactive victim. You claim you want transformation, yet you remain deeply, neuroticament committed to the safety of your current misery because the familiar cage feels infinitely more secure than the vast, terrifying freedom of your untapped potential. The painful friction you feel vibrating within your chest right now is the acute, agonizing realization that your external life is a perfect, uninterrupted mirror of your internal chaos. Every time you say, "I will act like a success once I finally succeed," or "I will love myself once I am finally loved by another," you are actively conditioning your psyche to perpetuate an endless state of lack, ensuring that the very future you desperately pray for remains psychologically impossible to reach. You are caught in a looping, self-inflicted crisis of faith, paralyzed by an internal division where your conscious desires are completely sabotaged by the silent, heavy gravity of your unconscious convictions. This script is not a gentle lullaby to soothe your existential anxiety, it is an eviction notice for the illusions you have used to protect yourself from the burden of your own creative power. If you stay with me through this deep dive into the labyrinth of your mind, you will understand exactly how the metaphysical mechanics of the psyche operate. You will see that everything in your outer world begins to shift not when circumstances miraculously alter, but the precise moment you possess the terrifying courage to think, feel, and move through this life as if your victory were already an absolute, unshakable law of your reality. 1. The treason of the reactive ego. You are utterly convinced that you are reacting to reality, entirely blind to the fact that you are actually projecting it. The ego, in its profound insecurity, clings desperately to what it can observe, measure, and touch, foolishly believing that the external world is a fixed structure existing independently of the mind that perceives it. When you look at your life and say, "I am a failure because my current circumstances are failing," you are committing an act of supreme psychological treason. You are allowing the transient, dying echoes of your past choices to dictate the living, breathing reality of your present moment. This reactive stance completely abdicates your internal authority, reducing your consciousness to a pale, flickering shadow that merely bounces off the walls of external events. This structural flaw in your consciousness creates a devastating psychological feedback loop that ensures your permanent imprisonment. By constantly feeding your attention with the evidence of your current limitations, you are ordering your unconscious mind to reproduce those exact limitations over and over again. You look at the lack in your life, you feel the familiar sting of resentment, and that very emotion acts as a powerful magnetic command to the deeper layers of your psyche, ensuring tomorrow looks identical to yesterday. You are essentially trying to clean a dirty face by scrubbing the glass of the mirror. It is an exercise in absolute futility, a tragic waste of psychic energy that leaves you exhausted, cynical, and completely alienated from your own inherent power. To break this cycle, you must undergo a radical and deeply disorienting shift in perspective. You must learn to treat your outer circumstances not as an absolute truth, but as a psychological delayed reaction. What you see around you today is not a definition of who you are, it is simply the material corpse of who you were yesterday. The moment you stop granting the external world the power to validate your worth is the exact moment the chains begin to fracture. You must withdraw your psychic projections from the outer screen and realize that the movie you are watching is being generated by the projector inside your own skull. It requires an almost irrational discipline to look at a reality of lack and choose, instead, to anchor your internal state in a reality of abundance, but this is precisely where true psychological sovereignty begins. 2. Unmasking the shadow of lack. When you declare that you cannot act like a success until you possess the external proof, what you are actually doing is hiding a deeply corrupted, terrified aspect of your shadow. The shadow contains all those split off, rejected parts of yourself that you deem too dangerous, too pathetic, or too shameful to look at directly. In this specific case, your insistence on waiting for external evidence is a protective mask worn by an unconscious belief that you are fundamentally broken, unworthy, and incompetent. You project an air of practical rationality, claiming you are just being realistic, but this realism is nothing more than a highly intellectualized defense mechanism designed to protect you from the terrifying risk of failure. By analyzing this internal resistance, we discover that your unconscious mind is actually deeply invested in your continued failure. Failure is safe, failure is comfortable, failure requires absolutely nothing of you other than the familiar comfort of self-pity. If you were to genuinely step into the world as if you had already succeeded, you would immediately expose yourself to the intense glare of responsibility, the harsh judgment of your peers, and the terrifying possibility that your best efforts might still not be enough. Therefore, your ego prefers to remain a frustrated, unfulfilled victim because it allows you to maintain the comforting fantasy that you could be great, if only the world would finally give you a fair chance. This is the dirty secret your shadow desperately wishes to keep hidden from your conscious awareness. You prefer the slow, suffocating death of your current mediocrity over the sharp, electrifying terror of psychological rebirth. Every time you check your external reality to see if it is safe to believe in yourself, your shadow smiles, knowing it has successfully sabotaged your growth yet again. To dissolve this paralyzing dynamic, you must drag this hidden investment in your own misery out into the uncompromising light of consciousness. You must look directly at your self-sabotaging patterns and boldly say, "I see exactly what I am doing. I am using my external reality as an excuse to avoid the terrifying burden of my own potential." 3. The metaphysical mechanics of the unconscious. The unconscious mind does not understand the concept of time. It knows absolutely no distinction between a memory, a present observation, or a vivid internal anticipation. To the vast, primordial ocean of your deep psyche, everything is happening right here, right now. When you consistently embody the emotional state of a person who is broken, ignored, or waiting for a break, the unconscious processes this state as an absolute, timeless truth about your identity. It accepts your feelings of lack as a literal blueprint and immediately begins mobilizing all your psychological resources, your intuition, your perception, your focus, and your behavior, to construct a physical reality that perfectly matches that internal blueprint. You must realize that your unconscious mind is an incredibly efficient, completely non-judgmental executioner of your deepest convictions. It does not argue with you, it simply materializes who you believe you are. If your internal state is defined by the statement, "I am searching for success," the unconscious will ensure you remain a perpetual searcher, meaning it will explicitly keep success just out of reach so that you can continue fulfilling the identity of someone who is searching. It is a profound misunderstanding to think you attract what you want in this life. The absolute psychological truth is that you attract exactly what you are. Therefore, when you deliberately choose to adopt the internal posture of someone whose victory has already occurred, you are not engaging in childish wishful thinking or cheap positive visualization. You are fundamentally rewriting the operational code of your deeper psyche. You are providing the unconscious with a completely new set of structural instructions. By consistently feeling the relief, the stability, and the calm assurance of an achieved goal, you force the unconscious mind to reorient its massive, subterranean power. It begins to alter what your eyes notice, how your voice resonates, and how you respond to unexpected crises, systematically rearranging your behavioral patterns until your physical life matches your internal conviction. 4. Dismantling the tyranny of the senses. Your physical senses are notorious liars. They are designed purely for biological survival, not for psychological transformation. They can only report on what already exists in the material world. They are completely blind to the embryonic potentials swirling within your unconscious. Yet, you treat the testimony of your eyes and ears as if it were the ultimate truth of your existence. If your bank account is empty, your senses scream, "You are poor," and you immediately collapse into the emotional state of poverty. In doing so, you have allowed the cold, dead objects of the outer world to dictate the warm, living current of your internal life, completely reversing the natural, psychological flow of creation. This submissive reliance on sensory data keeps you permanently trapped within a closed, claustrophobic psychological circuit. You perceive lack, you feel anxiety, you act defensively, and your defensive actions naturally produce more lack, which your senses then dutifully report back to you, reinforcing your anxiety. This is the tragic plight of the modern individual, a highly intelligent being who has become completely enslaved by the very reality they have unconsciously generated. You have forgotten that the outer world is not a solid, immovable block of stone, but a highly fluid, plastic medium that is constantly responding to the subtle, invisible pressures of your deepest psychological currents. To break free from this sensory dictatorship, you must develop the capacity for what I can only describe as psychological blindness. You must learn to close your eyes to the outer world when it contradicts the truth of where you are going. This is not a delusional denial of physical reality, it is a conscious decision to prioritize the primary reality of the psyche over the secondary reality of the material world. When your senses tell you that you are alone, unloved, or unsuccessful, you must have the internal fortitude to say, "This is merely old data. I refuse to let this dying reflection disrupt the new state I am actively constructing within myself right now." 5. The neurotic craving for external certainty. The human ego possesses an almost pathologically insatiable craving for certainty. It desperately wants a guarantee of success before it is willing to risk its emotional capital. You want the universe to show you a sign, to give you an explicit promise, or to open a clear path before you step out of your comfortable rut. But this neurotic demand for certainty is the absolute death of psychological growth. The universe never bargains with the ego on those terms. It demands that you step into the dark room first, and only after you have fully committed to the darkness will the light be provided. This desperate need for a guarantee is actually a severe form of psychological regression. It is the cry of a terrified child wanting a parent to assure them that everything will be perfectly fine before they dare to take a single step. But adulthood, and specifically the process of individuation, demands that you become your own source of authority. When you refuse to act as if you have already succeeded until you receive an external sign, you are essentially telling yourself that your internal world is completely powerless, completely dependent on the whims of fate or luck. You are reinforcing your own helplessness, ensuring that even if an opportunity does arrive, you will be far too paralyzed by fear to actually seize it. The truth is that the external sign you are so desperately waiting for can only be generated by your own internal shift. You must become the sign you are looking for. You must embody the certainty that you are trying to extract from the world around you. When you boldly choose to act, think, and feel from the perspective of your inevitable success, you completely bypass the ego's need for external validation. You no longer need the world to tell you who you are because you have already decided who you are, and that internal certainty radiates outward with such immense psychological force that it inevitably commands the respect and compliance of the physical world. 6. Projecting the archetype of the victor. Deep within your collective unconscious lies a vast, ancient gallery of universal patterns we call archetypes, primal blueprints of human experience that wait quietly for your conscious awareness to activate them. Among these powerful forces reside two competing structures: the archetype of the victim and the archetype of the king or the victor. Currently, by acting from a place of constant lack, hesitation, and fear, you are fully possessed by the victim archetype. You are allowing this toxic, ancient pattern to speak through your mouth, make your decisions, and view your entire life through a distorted lens of helplessness and resentment. The archetype of the victor, however, does not wait for a crown to be placed upon its head by external forces. It carries its sovereignty within its very posture, long before the kingdom is ever physically conquered. When you choose to act as if your goals have already been achieved, you are deliberately stepping out of the small, cramped confines of your personal ego and consciously invoking this monumental archetypal energy. You are aligning your personal will with a massive, transpersonal current of strength, authority, and unshakable confidence. This is not a superficial performance or an act of empty vanity. It is a deep, psychological possession where you allow the best, most realized version of yourself to take the driver's seat of your life. The moment this archetypal shift occurs, the entire tone of your existence changes dramatically. You no longer walk into a room hoping people will like you, you walk into a room as someone who belongs there. You no longer beg for scraps of validation, you offer value from an inexhaustible internal wellspring. This profound shift in alignment alters your entire psychological field, transforming the way you speak, the way your eyes hold contact, and the way you make critical decisions under immense pressure. By pretending to be the master of your fate, you invite the archetype of the master to enter your consciousness and turn that necessary fiction into an absolute, concrete reality. 7. The alchemical transmutation of identity. To act as if your goals have already been achieved requires nothing less than a total, agonizing alchemical destruction of your current identity. You cannot simply patch over your old, insecure self with a few fragile layers of positive thinking. The old self must be utterly dissolved in the fires of conscious awareness so that a new self can emerge from the ashes. This is what the ancient alchemists referred to as the nigredo, the blackening, the painful but absolutely necessary stage of decay where your current illusions, your comfortable excuses, and your familiar miseries are completely burned away to make room for the gold. The reason you find it so intensely difficult to act as if you have already succeeded is because your ego is desperately fighting for its survival. It knows that if you truly adopt the mindset of a successful, self-actualized individual, the old, comfortable, complaining version of you will have to die. And the psyche fears psychological death just as much as the physical body fears physical death. Your old identity will scream, it will rebel, it will invent countless rationalizations, and it will flood your body with intense feelings of fraudulence and anxiety, all in a desperate, last-ditch effort to force you to return to the safety of your familiar, unfulfilled state. You must expect this fierce internal resistance and learn to welcome it as proof that the alchemy is actually working. When you feel like a fraud for acting like a success, it does not mean you are doing something wrong, it means your old identity is actively suffocating under the weight of your new choices. You must look at that discomfort with a cold, detached eye and say, let it die. You must be willing to endure the profound disorientation of losing your old, limited self if you ever hope to claim the expansive, powerful identity that is waiting for you on the other side of this psychological crucible. 8. The law of synchronicity and internal alignment. When you truly commit to acting, feeling, and moving through the world as if your deepest aspirations have already been realized, you tap into a phenomenon I call synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence of internal psychological states and external material events. The world is not a cold, indifferent machine operating purely on mechanical cause and effect, it is deeply interconnected with the human psyche through an underlying layer of meaning. When you make a radical, unshakable shift in your internal alignment, you send a shockwave through this psychological field, causing the external world to respond with a series of astonishing, unexpected events that perfectly mirror your new state. Doors you didn't even know existed will suddenly swing open, the exact individuals you need to meet will cross your path at the precise moment you need them, and resources will materialize out of apparent thin air. To the uninitiated, these events look like wild strokes of luck or miraculous coincidences, but to the psychologist, they are the natural, inevitable results of a psyche that has finally resolved its internal divisions. When your conscious intent and your unconscious conviction are completely unified in the embodiment of your success, you stop scattering your energy in 1,000 conflicting directions and become a highly focused laser beam of creative intent. This is the ultimate secret of human existence that the masses look at but never truly see. You do not achieve success through endless, frantic outward striving. You achieve success by maintaining an internal state of absolute alignment until the physical world has no choice but to warp itself around your conviction. The frantic, exhausting hustle that society glorifies is almost always a neurotic defense mechanism designed to mask a deep, underlying fear of failure. True power is remarkably quiet, remarkably still, and utterly uncompromising. It moves through the world with the calm, heavy gravity of a celestial body, knowing with absolute, terrifying certainty that the reality it desires is already an accomplished fact within the timeless depths of the soul. If you have listened closely to my words today, you should feel a deep, unsettling crack forming in the foundation of your old reality. You can no longer look at your current failures, your loneliness, or your lack of resources and blame them on an unkind, uncaring world, you now know, with absolute psychological clarity, that these circumstances are merely the materialization of your own split-off fears and your profound reluctance to embrace your true power. The comforting illusion that you are a helpless victim of fate has been completely stripped away from you, leaving you entirely alone with the terrifying, beautiful burden of your own consciousness. You stand at a brutal, uncompromising crossroads. You can either retreat back into the safe, suffocating darkness of your old, reactive ego, or you can step boldly forward into the blinding light of your own potential, carrying yourself through this world from this exact second onward as the absolute master of your destiny. If this deep, psychological confrontation has shattered your illusions and awakened the dormant sovereignty within your soul, then you have already begun to perceive what sleeping masses spend their entire lives desperately trying to avoid. Do not let this spark of clarity fade back into the comfortable fog of your old routine. Secure your place in this ongoing process of self-mastery by subscribing to this channel immediately. Leave a comment below stating exactly what hidden fear or identity your shadow has been using to keep you waiting, and declare the precise state of victory you have the courage to embody starting today. Speak your truth clearly in the comments, for the simple act of dragging your inner convictions out into the light of conscious articulation is the very first step toward transforming your reality forever.